Welcome back. I'm your host, Timothy Rhyme. This is Grown Man Sessions, and it's about to get real. On this episode, we're going to be talking with an international spoken word artist by the name of Obbie West, and he's going to be talking to us about sexual violence prevention advocacy and what we can do as men to participate and be allies in trying to prevent people from being sexually assaulted and just changing the culture of men talking about things in private, maybe not understanding what we're saying to the fullest extent and how it can be harmful. So please tune in because it's some very informative information, and I guarantee you it's gonna enlighten you a little bit. If you believe in what we're doing here at Grown Man Sessions, please consider becoming a patron for as little as a few dollars a month. You can help us tremendously. Make sure you follow us on social media at Grown Man Sessions. If you feel up to it, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and drop us a comment because we would love to know what you guys are thinking about what we're doing. And without further ado, let's get this thing going. All right, fellas, today it's about to get real. I want to talk to you guys today about something that should be important to all of us, and it's very important to me because I have a daughter. And after doing some research on my guest today, I stumbled upon some facts about sexual violence and sexual abuse that I didn't know about. And I want to dig into that today. And I want to get a little bit more insight on how we can be better informed and just be better men and be an advocate for change when it comes to sexual violence. So I want to introduce you guys to my guest today. His name is Obbie West. What's up, Obbie? How you doing?
I'm blessed, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, bro. Thank you for making the time and joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Most definitely. So man, I saw that you're an LA native, you're an Army vet, international spoken word artist and author. And one of the things I wanted to kind of talk to you about today is your work in advocacy. Uh,
Mhm.
Most specifically, the fact that you are an avid sexual violence prevention advocate committed to promoting awareness through training and education. So what was your calling to get into that line of work, if you don't mind me asking?
If I start from the root, I grew up in an abusive household, right? I grew up where I watched one parent abuse another parent.
Hmm.
And when you see that, you see these two individuals on other occasions tell each other, I love you. So now as a child, you're met with the challenge of having to figure out what love is, right? Because the demonstration that you're being shown is that it's abusive. So growing up, I decided my definition of love wasn't abuse, and I developed an absolute disdain for anything that looked like or made me feel like or made someone else feel like what I had to witness.
When it comes to sexual violence and sexual violence in general, having read some of the statistics that were on your website, if you don't mind, I actually want to read one that I thought was pretty pretty scary actually. It says that every 73 seconds another American is sexually assaulted. Um, that was kind of eye opening for me. I didn't know that. And so I want to ask you, like, why do you think that it's so common? I mean, it just seems like that's really common.
Great question. I think society, even we as allies, people who don't condone sexual assault and harassment. Sometimes we perpetuate certain beliefs that make that okay
Hmm.
subconsciously, and we don't know we're doing it. I
Hmm.
was watching I was watching. Matter of fact, I'll use a different example, just something common. If say I'm a perpetrator and I have the intent to go out and sexually assault people, I have a toolbox. And when society says, "Well, look what she has on," what do you expect? I take that and I put it in my toolbox. When society
Hmm.
says men are sex crazed, so you can't rape a man because he wanted it anyway. You can't rape the willing. When you say that, I take that and I put it in my toolbox. When you say,
Hmm.
I mean, what did the person expect? They over there at 3 a.m. What else you think? I take that and I put it in my toolbox as a predator. So now when I'm looking for somebody to target, I'm looking for someone that falls under that criteria. Somebody that's going to come over after 3, somebody who's going to have on short clothes. So now when I try to justify what I did, I'll say, well, she had this on. She came on And society is going to roll with it because you have that opinion as well. So now when I'm standing in the
Mm,
courtroom and the 12 jurors, they're a microcosm of society. So when I took all the stuff that them jurors had put in my toolbox and I used it as my justification, somebody over there gonna side with me and I'm gonna walk. So there's so many things that we say in society that makes sexual assault hard to prosecute. And if I'm a man and you say, and there's a woman who's attractive and she assaults me, one, I'm likely not going to report because the stigma that I'm weak. Then I'm
mm-hmm,
not going to report because you already said that you can't rape the willing, that man is sex crazed. So why would I report when I've already been convicted of consent?
mm-hmm.
So when society perpetuates a certain mentality and then someone is assaulted who falls under the criteria of that, who had on something short, who was somewhere at a certain time, they're reluctant to report because in their mind, they've already been convicted. If I go report, they're just going to ask me why my skirt was so short. So I'm just not going to say
Mm-hmm.
anything. So if I'm a predator and I know people aren't going to report for this reason, imagine if you knew that if you robbed the bank, they weren't going to call the police. I'd be in a bank every week.
That's
You know
real.
what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why it's so widespread because there's predators out there, but then you have society who's supporting the predators' efforts subconsciously by the things that we perpetuate. If that makes sense at all, we may not do everything we can to keep ourselves from being vulnerable, right? We may go places, we may get drunk, we may fall out and be passed out around the wrong people, but it never justifies a crime being committed against us. It
Mm-hmm.
never justifies a crime. It may mean
Right.
we need to do something different next time, but it doesn't justify the crime. But
Right.
society says it does. And when society says it does, it creates a reluctancy for people to report, people to go forward, and that reluctancy creates a green flag for assaulters to assault.
The cool part about it, man, is that like what a few years back when that one Supreme Court justice was getting sworn in, or they were like trying to get him through, and they had that lady that came out saying that like, nah, this dude like sexually assaulted me like back a long time ago. Oh man, I remember hearing all the headlines and watching the news about it, and you know they're saying the same thing that you're saying. You know, like, oh well, they're basically putting her on trial. They're basically like saying like, oh, it was all her fault. You know, she shouldn't have been doing this. Like, oh, he was just joking around. Like, oh, he wasn't that bad. Like the guy was like, you know, the victim, and then she was like the bad guy. And I'm
Right.
thinking to myself, like, man, it's so twisted. Like, this is some
Right.
twisted stuff.
Absolutely. A lady walked up to me in the airport. She said, "Thank you for what you do, but I think women should just stop reporting." A woman told me this. She said, "Women
What?
should just stop reporting." If I'm a predator and I hear her say that, guess who the next person I'm gonna target? Her, because she's not gonna say anything. She
Right.
said she was sexually assaulted, and when she went forward and reported, um, her name was dragged through the mud. She said the process was extremely incriminating. She kept having to repeat her story,
Yeah.
which was like re-victimizing her because she kept having to talk.
Mm-hmm.
She said that whole process destroyed her. So she said
Mm-hmm.
she don't think women should report. So if she has a friend and her friend is sexually assaulted, her friend comes to her, what advice you think she gonna give her friend?
Don't
Well,
report.
don't say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So the dynamic is extremely crazy.
Man. Yeah, I think it's gotta. I think like with anything, man. Like I know that you know us as regular citizens, and like we could play our part. But I feel like with anything, man, it's always like a top down approach. You know, it's like a you know, it's got to come from like places of power. It's got to come from like places that have like the ability to inflict some sort of penalty. You know, and to hear like the Supreme Court justice, you know, and all the powerful politicians around him, and even the president at the time, you know, like justifying all this stuff and kind of like washing it away, man. That's like the ultimate like green light, like how you said, you know, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
absolutely. And the other part of that is there's probably about a handful of sex offenders, blatant sex offenders. And then there's a countless amount of sex offenders who are not predators. It's just that I have a skewed opinion of what consent is. Me and this person was texting 2 weeks ago. We were saying that we want to link up, we want to have sex, we want to be involved. When I finally link up with the person, I start drinking, the person starts drinking, and they absolutely faded. But in my mind, 2 weeks ago, I already got permission.
Mm.
So now I go forward and have sex with this person based on this old permission, not knowing that they're not in their right mind. Now I wake up and I'm a sex offender, but I'm not a predator, but I'm a sex offender. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
these are the instances that happen later on when somebody comes up and say that person assaulted me. I didn't assault her. She agreed to it 2 weeks before, or he agreed to it 2 weeks. So I think the conversations have to be held where we can apply the accurate and healthy definitions to consent, so we don't have all these instances where people are being assaulted by people who aren't predators because of ignorance. You just didn't
Mm.
know. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So predators are one thing, there's a handful of those, but how many instances have people did things that they didn't even know was predatory behavior because they've just pretty much been functioning based off of stigmas?
Right. Right. And how would you define like what that consent is like for us guys out there that that may not know?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So those are the conversations that have to be held. And we like consent. If you have every state has a definition of consent in their law book. Some states
Hmm.
do not have a definition of consent. So my question is, why isn't there a federal definition, something that governs the
Yeah.
country? Because
Yep.
if you have a definition of consent in this state and I move to another state, I'm carrying that definition with me to the other state, but that might be an absolute violation. So why is there ambiguity to what consent is? And I think that's part of the problem. It's embedded in the judicial system. Like North Carolina, if you look up the definition of rape in North Carolina in their law book, the definition is forceful vaginal penetration, which means a man can't be raped in that state.
Oh wow.
And it's embedded in their law book that the definition of rape is forceful vaginal penetration. So that supports the stigma that men can't be raped. In that
Mm.
same state, the definition of mental incapacitation is if I give you a controlled substance against your knowledge and you take that substance until you're mentally incoherent and I have sex with you, it's illegal. But if you intoxicate yourself just by overconsumption, it doesn't fall under the definition of mental incapacitation. Now you free game because you got yourself drunk.
What? Oh my god.
This
I
is in the
didn't
law. This is in the
I
law
didn't
book.
know that.
Yeah. So there's from you have blatant perpetrators, you have people who aren't predators but just don't really know what definitions of consent is. Then you have judicial system that has laws that support ill behavior. North Carolina just changed their law on consent being persistent. For up until like a year ago in North Carolina, consent was persistent, which means if you say yes first, one time, after I penetrate you, you don't have the right to say no after that. So after I penetrate you, if you start experiencing something you don't like, you can't say no because you've already allowed me to. They just changed that like a year ago.
Oh wow.
So it's even embedded in the judicial system. There's all types of loopholes that allow certain things to happen. And then these things aren't punished. People aren't talking about it. So when you ask me, why do I think it's so widespread and why do you think it's every 73 seconds? Just because of everything we're talking about right now.
So that kind of like leads me to my next question, man, is what can we do as men to help support the prevention of more sexual violence?
As men, um, one in six, 1 in 6. The statistic is every 1 in 6. If we're talking about men victimization, the statistic is every 1 in 6 men have been victimized. Which means if you go in a room and there's 100 dudes, 1 in 6 in that room, right?
Hmm.
I think one thing as men, we have to give the man adjacent to us permission to show certain levels of sensitivity. A
Hmm.
lot of times we as men, we put on a facade because of the man who's around us. We might be a man who like to dance, but if we get around other groups of men, we might not dance because it might be perceived a certain way.
Hmm.
Um, I remember I was standing inside of a room with a friend of mine, and we was in Oklahoma getting ready to do a presentation. We was in a hotel room, and he was about to go tell for the first time that he was sexually assaulted as a child. His first time giving his testimony. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, bro, what you gonna do if you get up there and you feel like you want to cry?" He just froze. So after about 3 seconds, I said, hey, I think you should just cry. Just cry, finish the presentation, and we get up out of there. And it seemed like instantly his shoulders rose because the man next to him just gave him permission to cry. And he know when he come home, it ain't gonna be no scrutiny in the car. It ain't gonna be no teasing.
Hmm. Right,
So as
right.
men, we have to give other men the permission to show certain levels of sensitivity. When we do that, then we'll have more men reporting. We'll have more men talking about what happened. Right now, there are sexual assault shelters, and the names of them are Crisis Center for Women, this Center for Women, this for women. They have the word woman embedded in the name of the organization. So if I'm a
Hmm.
man in that area, what's the chance I'm gonna go in there and report what happened to me? Probably no chance. It's for
Right,
women.
right. Yep.
But who's going to spend the resources to build an organization to help a problem that you don't know exists? So if men
Yeah.
aren't reporting and society don't know that that's a problem, I'm not building no building for that.
Right.
But if we give men permission to show sensitivity, they'll in turn start reporting. Once they start reporting, it'll be more widespread that this is a problem, and now we'll have somewhere to go. So I think that's the first thing is we have to give men that permission. We have to also not be afraid to debt certain situations out of fear of how we might be perceived. Say you with a group of your homeboys or somebody say, hey, look what she got on. It ain't no way that she don't want it. Who gonna say, hey, hold up, bro? Who gonna correct them?
Hmm.
Even if we disagree, sometimes we just sit silent. So we also have to have that intestinal fortitude to correct the dudes who we couple ourselves with. Um, I think off the top of my head, I think those two things are great stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so too. It reminds me of a conversation that I just had on another episode with a gentleman that we were talking about different forms of healthy and unhealthy masculinity. And he was talking about, how society kind of like, implicitly and explicitly teaches us like the kind of men that we quote unquote should or need to be, strong, don't show emotion, like, you know, uh, goes and gets all the hot girls or whatever, like just all these healthy and unhealthy uh, aspects of, what we're taught as to be a man. And that's what that reminds me of.
Yeah,
It reminds me of like, when you're out with your boys and people talk like that, like even like what the president said that, like, well, like when he was in office, he said, oh, that's just locker room talk. I mean, it's locker room talk because, like you said, nobody says anything. Like
absolutely.
it's kind of just like a, behind closed doors. Like we have this right, but I think you're right, man. I think if we were able to like, change the conversation behind closed doors, then it'll change when it comes out into light.
Absolutely. You ever been to a barbecue before and
For
everybody's
sure.
sitting down and somebody's cooking and then the person who cooking say, hey, the food done. And nobody moves, everybody just sit there. Then you got one person that say, man, I'm about to eat. And they get up and walk towards the table and then everybody get up in the line for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact same thing. In a lot of cases, we feel like we're the minority. We feel like our opinion is the minority opinion, but really it's the majority opinion. And all it takes is for one person to say it, and then all the other people follow along. So you might be in a group of 10, and somebody might say something you don't agree with. You feel like, well, nobody else is saying anything, so I'm the only person that don't agree. So if I say something, I may be ostracized by the rest. It's like 8 other people in that group that don't agree either, but they all thinking that they're the minority. And all it takes is for one person to say, I don't agree. Then the other one to be like, yeah, man, me neither. Yeah, man, me. And then what you'll learn is the minority is actually the person who made the comment. You know what I mean?
I like that, man.
But it takes that one person to say something about something for us to realize, you know what, I'm not the minority.
I think that that speaks to just having courage and allowing yourself to, maybe be a little bit vulnerable, man, and just like you said, like having that fortitude to just kind of just do what's right. I don't know why that's so hard for us sometimes. I know, I've done it in the past, and I probably have done it like even in the recent past, but it's something that I feel like we all should work on and just be a little bit more mindful of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's self-preservation. I've done it too. We ever since little kids, we've been raised to protect our masculinity at all costs. And
Mm-hmm.
how the word masculine has been defined to us is very unhealthy. So we've been
Mm-hmm.
taught that masculine is to be afraid, right? Be afraid to express your feelings, be afraid to be empathetic, be afraid to show emotion, be afraid. All these things equate to masculine. So they've taught us that masculine means being scared, right? The most masculine thing you can do is be emotional in front of people and not care who has something to say. That's G to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When you can do that, that's the G shit in the world to me. But when you gotta act like you okay and you not, and then go home and cry, that ain't masculine. But that's what society taught us is masculine. So we take that definition, and then self-preservation kicks in. If I'm in a group of 10 and somebody says something that I think is out of line, I'm in a safe place when I'm quiet. There's no attention on me. I have to step out of that safe place and potentially put myself in a line of fire by speaking up. Self preservation tells me don't do that. Stay
Mm-hmm.
safe. So it's self preservation that keeps us from doing that. And I've done it more of my life than I have not. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And there's some situations right now we're still gonna take a little bit for me to really step up and say, hey, hold on. I mean, that ain't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that reminds me of another thing I heard on one of these sessions is a guy that said that he's learned to be able to set boundaries for the kind of like people and energy that he has in his life, and he said one of the things that he learned was that setting those boundaries didn't have to be confrontational. And I think what you're saying is like it reminds me of like thinking like, oh, if I say something, maybe this person's gonna want to like fight me, or maybe it's gonna come across as like confrontational, and then like that kind of like factors into the decision. But I like what he said because he says, nah, man, he's like, I just kind of speak my piece and just let it be and just say it in a genuine and heartfelt and and just like real way, because I mean,
Mhm.
I think like how you said, man, like I like how you said like when somebody gets up and goes to get the barbecue, other people are willing to follow. Like when you say things in a certain way and people know that you have good intentions, and it's not like argumentative, it's just like, hey man, that's not cool. It's something that it's hard to be confrontational about, you know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, I was just pretty much agreeing with what you said. I think as long as it's genuine, people will recognize it and it'll become more admirable than it is repugnant. You know what I mean? People will
Right.
gravitate towards it more. Even if they don't say nothing, they be thinking to themselves, you know what? You got a point. You know what I mean? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I got a homie that teaches, and he understands, and he's got a lot of young men that still carry around, all these ideas. And he told me that he doesn't ever scold them, and he doesn't ever, like tell them what to do. He says if they say things that are inappropriate, he'll just ask them like, "Hey, bro, like, how would you feel if somebody said that about your mom, or how would you feel if somebody said that about your sister?" Just trying to give you a little bit of insight on the other side of that coin, man. And he
Mm-hmm.
said that it works. He said that that's like a
Right.
way that he gets these young guys to like kind of take a step back and think about it a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, I think that's valuable, man. It's extremely valuable. As men, we had this thing where even if we agree with something, we'll fight it if you told us in a place that made us feel challenged.
Hmm.
Like you and I can be walking in an empty building, just you and I, and you bump into me. I'm gonna turn around and look at you. You're gonna look at me. We'll be like, "Hey, my bad, bro. Don't worry about it." You and I can be walking in a club where there's a line of women, and you bump into me in the club, and now it's like, now I gotta be, you know what I mean? Now I gotta be aggressive. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Same dude bumped into me. It wasn't intentional in either place, but now I have to. So when you have men and we're in certain places and somebody correct us, and that correction makes us feel like these people saw him correct me, we'll start fighting against stuff that we agree with. We got to shed that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think it's more
yeah.
admirable if 50 people around say, "Hey, you know what? I ain't never looked at it like that. Hey, I appreciate you." And those 50 people are gonna be more admirable of us than they are if we jumping back because it's something that's silly. But if we got to figure out how to shed
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, because that could be taken as disrespect, and I don't think that that's necessarily disrespect. I think that's more of just differences of opinion, I guess, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Okay. And the bottom line, man, sometimes we need to be checked.
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
Sometimes we need to be checked. And when that's the case, man, we just got to accept that checking. You know what I mean? So I'm very conscious. I think emotional intelligence comes into play. Being able to consider how something is going to be received and trying to communicate in a way that our intent is met.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have an intent, but the impact doesn't match the intent. My
Mm-hmm.
intent is this, but the way it made you feel was a different way. So to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that the impact matches the intent, I think we have a responsibility to do that too. If I saw somebody who I felt needed to be corrected, if it didn't have to happen now, and I think I get the best result out of doing it later, I might wait and say, "Hey, man, remember earlier when you said?" And now they might be a little more receptive because they don't feel like they're being put out there. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can't wait. Sometimes it got to happen where it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And as men, we just got to be receptive to that.
Yeah, I think that's a dope thing to help spread out there, man. And I hope that message gets out there. Before we go, man, I wanted to ask you this question. I asked all my guests, and I love the responses because they're never the same. I just want to know what you think is possibly one of the biggest lessons you've learned on your journey so far.
Wow, that's a great question. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in my journey, I'm assuming when you say journey, you're just talking about life.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the biggest lessons that um hope this don't sound PC or heaven is reached by how we treat people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest lessons I've learned. There was a period of time where everything I did was for me. It was for my best benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten more out of being selfless than I have out of being any other way. So I think how we treat people is very, 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 very important.
Mm-hmm.
And off the top of my head, that's one of the biggest lessons and one of the most appreciative things that I've come across during my journey.
Oh man, that's dope, bro. Yeah, I like that. I don't want to get into all the details, but I had a near death experience in 2011, and I heard a voice tell me, "Be good to yourself and be good to others because that's why you're here." So I've kind of lived by that mantra, ever since, man. And I agree. I think it's a lot more rewarding and fulfilling than people might think.
Man, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, Obi, can you please tell the audience where they can find you, where they can check out some of your poetry, like where they can reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is Obbie West, OBBIEWEST. So Instagram is at Obbie West. LinkedIn is Obbie West. Facebook is Obbie West. Website is www.obbiewest.com. Advocacy website is www.spokenadvocacy. Instead of spoken word, spokenadvocacy.com. But even if you go to obbiewest.com, there's a link that says advocacy. You click on that, it's going to take you straight to the other website. So everything is Obbie West.
Right on, man. And I'll put the links in the description below too, so you guys can get it firsthand. Thank you so much. Not only for coming on the show, but just for the work that you do. I think it's so important, and I really hope that whoever stumbles upon this episode kind of picks that message up, man, because I know I have.
Yeah, no problem, and I appreciate it. No, we've been trying to get at this for a while. I think the first time I got busy and forgot or something, so I messed that up. That was my fault, but we was able to bring it back around and get it done. So I appreciate you creating this platform, not just for me, but for every message that needs an outlet. Appreciate it.
Definitely, man. Definitely, yeah, yeah. I'm very grateful, man. Like I told you before we got started, man. I feel like the universe is like just blessing me and connecting dots for me, man. So I just trying to keep it going, man. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I always end the interviews by saying one person could change the world, but it's one person at a time, and that one person is you. If you guys got anything from this episode, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe, and drop us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. And yeah, until the next time, I hope you guys are doing well. Take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and just make sure that you tune in next time for another Grown Man Session. Peace out, Obi.